Lefties shooting at 3 under 69 today. Brooks Koepka 1 shot off the lead. Defending champ Colin Morikawa is 1 over, while Dustin Johnson and Adam Scott both missing the weekend cut. It's win or go home tonight in the NBA with the last play-in tourney game. Golden State hosting Memphis on ESPN TV, radio, and the app, with coverage starting at the bottom of the hour. The winner clinches the 8th seed in the West and will take on top seed Utah in the first round of the playoffs, with Game 1 in Salt Lake City on Sunday. It's the first season the NBA has had a play-in tournament to determine the last 2 seeds in each conference. Commissioner Adam Silver would like to see the play-in continue beyond this season.
I haven't made any secret about the fact I want it to be. I have 2 constituencies out there I need to convince of that. One is the 30 teams, and I think for the most part, they've supported it.
Adam Silver on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin. Manny Pacquiao will be fighting for the first time in over 2 years when he takes on welterweight champ Errol Spence. In August in Las Vegas, Spence is 27-0 and is 11 years younger than 42-year-old Pacquiao. NHL, round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Bruins a 1-0 lead on the Capitals in the second period of Game 4 in Boston. Boston with a 2-1 series lead. Game 3 in Nashville, and the Predators lead Carolina 2-1. End of the first period. Hurricanes have a 2-0 series lead.
I'm Greeny, and it is the best sports weekend of the year. Monday, we're back and better than ever, covering all the NBA playoff action, big baseball series, and more. See you then. Greeny, starting 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.
Isn't this a sports show?
Papa, tell me about the radio days. Oh, well, there were many struggles and many difficulties.
Almost entirely.
I remember hearing this one radio show where they did nothing but visual gags on an audio medium. The host did a whole segment with his nose taped to his forehead.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Papa, whatever happened to him? Son, I don't think you're ready for that story. All I can tell you is don't do cocaine. Too late, Papa! I learned it from watching you!
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
You did this to me, Papa! I just wanted to be like you, Papa!
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We are shot out of a cannon tonight here on Almost Entirely Sports. We're here with you for an hour. We've got 1 hour. I'm very glad to have this hour because we certainly have an hour's worth of things to discuss tonight. And we are going to blaze through these next 60 minutes and try to cover everything that we haven't got to talk about here over these last couple of days. We got all sorts of great stuff for you here on Sports Radio 810. Lots of NBA playoff action, which is extremely exciting. And for me, extremely depressing. We will try to talk about some of that later on as well. And then starting here in an hour on this very station, Memphis versus Golden State. Winner gets the Jazz, loser gets the boot. And that's the NBA play-in game, baby. It's been a lot of fun, but it's also been very distressing and upsetting for me, your resident Phoenix Suns fan. 1 hour, me, Joshua Brisco, Rudy Salazar on the other side of the glass, well, on the other side of this glass, here's McFly on the other side of 2 panes of glass. Let's get it. We'll get to NBA stuff here in a second, or maybe later on, but there are sort of 2 or 3 larger picture Chiefs topics right now, and the biggest one, and the one that you already know that I'm going to start with today, is talking about Bashaud Breeland. This is the most vocal I've seen him be on Twitter. I mean, he's even kind of acknowledged, like, hey man, I'm just gonna talk about it now because this so many of these last several years, I've just taken what's there and I've just fought through and I've produced at a high level and all this stuff. In fact, he just, I think recently here, retweeted someone else's tweet. Looks like it's quoting a lyric that says, I'm cool with waiting a little longer for something I deserve. And I think that's probably where Bashaud Breeland is at right now, where this man is trying to get the money that he has actually ended up missing out on at a rate that simply does not match how well he's played over these last few years. And frustratingly to me, the team that he appears like he may be leaving soon is a team that could really use a sure thing at cornerback. And it really seems like he would be more than happy to stay in Kansas City. He's tweeted about, again, several things, and he's mentioned, hey, this is not a Kansas City thing or a Chiefs thing. Right now, it's about getting what I feel like I deserve, which is something that I think everyone on some level can relate to. And
never.
And for Bashaud Breeland, you've got to remember that this guy had a 3-year deal with some really solid money. I think it was in the high 20s with something like I was going to say 20. I was going to say 27, but I didn't want to get bogged down in trying to get the specifics. But I think it was around that with I think it might have been something like 11 guaranteed.
24, 3 years, 24. 11 guaranteed.
I've read and talked a lot about Bashaud Breeland's contract.
That was both forever ago and really not that long ago.
100%.
March 16th of 2018, which really isn't that long ago, but also feels like forever ago.
And in fairness, it's really an NFL career ago for most guys. And so Bashaud Breeland had that money coming from the Panthers, and then he had like a foot that got a cut and got infected, and it voided his contract. So he went and he took a 1-year deal, and then he took 2 consecutive more 1-year deals with the Chiefs. And now he's at this point where he probably, this offseason is probably his only real chance to get another deal that looks sort of like that Panthers deal. But whenever you're still a free agent in May, that's a very tough target to be able to hit. And so I think you can see some frustrations from Breeland in that regard. Sam Mellinger, in what regard? Sam Mellinger tweeted about Breeland earlier that I in a way that I thought really nailed it.
Made him uniquely qualified, you could say?
He was uniquely qualified to put out this tweet. He said, this is just a guess, but Bashaud had a life-changing contract that got ripped up because of a physical and ever since has been playing on 1-year deals. Would make all the sense in the world that he's tired of that and wants the security he feels he's earned. And I think Sam is exactly right. And Breeland at this point, and I know we're all talking about monopoly money, right? Whenever we talk about $11 million guaranteed, or we talk about these deals that have been $2 and $3 million a year and all that, everybody within the sound of my voice right now would quit their jobs to go make $3 million for 1 year, even pre-taxes. All that. I understand that, but on an NFL scale here, Bashaud Breeland is one of the, you could say 25, you could say 50 best cornerbacks in the world. Like he is in that range. It's fluctuated some over the last several years, but he is a very good starting caliber cornerback. And he has had a career that would indicate that he should have made more money to this point than he actually has. If you took Bashaud Breeland's career, and it can be the stats, it can be his film, it can be whatever metric you want. I'm saying by any metric, Bashaud Breeland to this point, you would expect him to have made more money than he has to this point in his career. And instead, since that deal with the Panthers got torn up off of the physical, he's been on the NFL equivalent of living paycheck to paycheck. Now, again, he's not literally living paycheck to paycheck. He could retire instead of signing another deal, and he and his family would be set for the rest of their lives with, a little budgeting and some investments or whatever, right? Like that, he is okay in terms of financials the way most people think about them, but he has been underpaid based off of his performance on an NFL scale. Man, that's got to be super frustrating. And the team that he's had the most success with, he's got 2 AFC championships and a Super Bowl ring with the Chiefs, doesn't seem to have at any point this offseason prioritized Bashaud Breeland. And that's frustrating to me. It's funny that so I should also have mentioned this already, but Nate Taylor, our friend from The Athletic, put out a story yesterday reporting that he'd visited with the Vikings. And there were replies to Nate's tweet that were just like, didn't even tag me. One of them just said, "Don't tell Josh." Because we had recorded a Times Ours earlier in the week where we talked about Breeland quite a bit. And this has become sort of a pet issue for me, I guess, this offseason. And I need to kind of recalibrate for everybody because I want to make some of these points as clear as possible, because I think if I can make them as clearly as possible, you'll have a better understanding of where I'm coming from and why this is so frustrating to me. Number one, you could take all but 3 or 4 players off this Chiefs roster, off of the roster, and they would still be the number one favorite for a Super Bowl this year. Like, Patrick Mahomes,
Gone.
That one's bad. That would be bad.
I thought we were going the other way with that. Gotcha.
No. Here's the thing, though, is Orlando Brown Jr. would move the needle, but would he make the team worse than the Bills? I don't know. Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, it would be close, but I'm really kind of cutting it there. Mm-hmm. If Tyrann Mathieu was gone, the Chiefs would be worse, but they would be a Super Bowl contender. If L'Jarius Sneed was gone, they'd be worse. If Juan Thornhill was gone, they'd be worse. If Anthony Hitchens or Frank Clark or any of the Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Willie Gay, well, if any of those guys were gone, they would be worse than they are right now, but they would still be a Super Bowl favorite, maybe the definitive Super Bowl favorite.
Yeah.
That's true for everybody except for 4 or 5 guys. If you replaced Andy Reid with Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs would be worse, but they would still be the favorites in the AFC.
Yep.
If you didn't have Dan Sorensen, they wouldn't be favorites.
He's one of those guys, right?
Yes.
You take Dan Sorensen off there. Dan Sorensen, Ben Neiman, and all of a sudden it's like, why play the season, you know? It's like Mahomes, Sorensen, Ben Neiman.
Jack Neiman. He's not even on the team.
Isn't it Nick Neiman?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Ends with a K.
His name is Nick.
Nick, Jack.
I think his name is
Neiman
Nick.
ends with an N, Rudy.
No,
Not a K.
like Nick and
The
Jay.
first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, his brother's name is Nick.
Yeah.
Plays for the Chargers now.
Nick and Jack end with a K.
It'd be great if Nick just ended with a C in this scenario.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. Sorry.
Dang it!
In fact, Rudy got the last 2 letters right. He got the first 2 wrong. So hitting 500.
Close enough.
Hello, that's great for baseball. Bad for a completion percentage.
I'd be the best hitter the Royals ever had.
You'd be the best
And I'd
hitter
be the
that
best-
anyone had ever had.
And I'd be
at
the
500.
best quarterback that, Oakland's ever had.
That's right. Oh,
Las Vegas.
That's right. Also, when I was going to correct you on, but you made it. You got there first.
We got there. Certainly, Jack. I mean, I'm better than at least one quarterback in Jacksonville.
You're better than Trevor Lawrence, but Tebow, hard to say.
Only future, young career. Future's bright for him, I hear.
Absolutely. I wonder if Trevor Lawrence is going to be comfortable moving to tight end, but it's a move they got to make.
He's a little lanky. He seems more a receiver type to me. Throw him out wide, let him run 9 routes.
Just make him a cornerback, why don't we?
So the Chiefs are in a place where as long as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and let's say Orlando Brown, let's say those
Dan
guys.
Sorensen.
And Dan Sorensen are all there.
This is seriously. You would have to lose both Kelce and Hill for it to really make an impact. Losing one sucks, but you have the fallback of having the other one.
Yeah,
losing
that's right.
both of them, then now the Chiefs are in a scary situation. Whether they'd be fine, but it'd be scary.
They're in a pickle, but they still have Patrick Mahomes and nobody else does.
Now,
that's going to be huge.
We might see more balls go in through receivers' hands and hit them in the
That's
face,
right.
and that's not great.
True.
But they would still have Patrick Mahomes.
So I'm making that point because somebody had tweeted me and said, like, hey, man, don't we do this every year with the Chiefs now with corners? And yes, we do. Yes.
Yep.
Now,
This show
pre-Spags,
especially.
this show for sure.
Yep.
Pre-Spags, we were right to say David Amerson's not going to do it. Mo Claiborne's not going to do it. You trade away Marcus Peters and replace him with David Amerson. That's not going to work. That was not a good move. And we were correct. That became a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
But with Spags and with the changing in the coaching staff and everything, the Chiefs, to their unending credit, have made incredible work with guys that I was not that confident in. Hopeful for sure, confident in not so much. But if you're going to offer me 2 doors, and one says, I think Spags can do this with anybody, and the other door says, I think Spags can do it with guys we've already seen do it before, I will take that second door. I would rather have some amount of certainty, especially whenever you look at the rest of this cornerback room, because it's fascinating. This is the other part of it that I want to make as clear as possible. I feel like I've been defending Charvarius Ward and was defending Charvarius Ward way before it was cool to do that. I was certainly not ahead of the hype train on L'Jarius Sneed, but I really loved watching him play football last year. I'm high on L'Jarius Sneed. I've always liked Rashad Fenton. I liked Rashad Fenton the first time I actually saw him on a football field at an NFL level. I like Rashad Fenton a lot. I think the DeAndre Baker edition was impeccable because you have a guy who is cut not because of his poor play, but because of an off-the-field thing that ends up not actually being his fault.
Yeah.
Where he was actually, as it seems, last we heard about it, like he was getting extorted.
Might have been the victim.
So
He was.
Bring him in. Love that. That one is an A+ dart throw because his talent level is impeccable and there's no reason to think that his play is like he's a non-NFL player. But This dude's coming off of a broken leg now, suffered in week 17. We saw, this is not an ACL, it's not the same thing. It could be better, it could be worse. But we saw Juan Thornhill didn't look like Juan Thornhill again until the playoffs last year. He tore his ACL week 17 the year prior. Mike Hughes, it's fine. Mm-hmm. You're trading for him based off of his college tape and his college health. And if he doesn't make it out of training camp, it's very little skin off your nose. If he ends up being a contributor, it's a steal. Okay, great. Bo Pete Keys, we'll find out. I think he's probably going to stay on this roster for another year while they figure out what he can do and how much development he needs. But those guys are all fine. In fact, I like that group. But I had somebody tweet me and say, that's a great group right there. Let me please correct you on this. That could be a great group. It is a very high ceiling group. Mm-hmm. It is also an incredibly volatile group. Mm-hmm. The difference between the best case scenario and worst case scenario for this group without Bashaud Breeland is outrageous. I'm going to give you realistic best case, worst case scenarios, okay? Best case scenario for Charvarius Ward, he builds on really the tape he put out 2 years ago and ends up actually taking another step forward and is a legit number one NFL corner. Love that. Worst case scenario, volatile position, and he slides another step like he did last year, where he took a small step back in terms of what he was able to do. Maybe he ends up being a bottom-level number 2 corner. Best case scenario, he's towards the top end of being a number 1 corner. I think those things are pretty much equally likely, and he probably ends up somewhere in the middle, but that's pretty volatile, and he's the guy is starting on this team. Yep. L'Jarius Sneed, best case scenario, he looks like he did last year, continues to evolve, learns NFL defenses, takes a step towards becoming perhaps an elite cornerback. Worst case scenario, sophomore slump, volatility of the position, a year of film on him. He's forced on the outside instead of being in the slot where he thrived the most last year. Mm-hmm. Extremely volatile.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like he's the guy who can be, Charvarius Ward is more the true potentially shutdown guy, where Sneed is the playmaker, right? The guy who goes and gets the ball, and part of that not just interceptions, but he finds ball, he kills ball.
Yeah, it'd be better if he would catch it instead of killing it.
Well,
but,
sometimes you got to catch to kill.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I think that the ceiling on Sneed is remarkably high, but also we're talking about a dude who's got a little less than a full NFL season. He missed a bunch of games. He got some extra playoff games, essentially a year. Rashad Fenton, I don't feel like is as volatile as this in this group, but I do feel like there's a chance that you find this guy who's been a part-time player, all of a sudden he goes from playing, I think it was 49% of the regular season defensive snaps last year to playing something between 70 and 80%. Can he be a competent player in the slot? I believe so. Mm-hmm. Is he going to be the guy that teams are most likely to pick on the way this defense is set up? Yeah, I think so.
Well, and this also applies to Sneed as well, but with Fenton, like if all of a sudden now you do play more, there is more tape on you, and then like Fenton has played really well in the slot, and some of that might be because teams aren't necessarily because he hasn't been a full-time slot guy. It's kind of been when other guys have gotten hurt, Right. It hasn't been a week-by-week basis. Now all of a sudden, if he is out there on a week-by-week basis, maybe there is that that Marcus Cooper flaw that all of a sudden the team figures out, and now he's getting beat. Now I don't know that. I'm not saying that's going to happen. But to go off what you're saying, like that's the volatility of this position. That's the nerves.
It's in the range of outcomes, which is inherent to this position. Yep. DeAndre Baker, I think his ceiling is that he is a starting NFL corner and that you don't have to worry about that. He was very good at that job. His floor right now is, I don't know what his leg looks like right now. That is not an indictment on him. I just don't know about the structural integrity of his leg. Don't count on the guy coming off of a broken leg. Be hopeful for that guy. And maybe in week 10, he ends up starting opposite Charvarius Ward. But don't bet on that right now. Mike Hughes, ceiling is, you look like you're getting the guy out of college. Floor is, he cannot play football. Like the Vikings traded him to the Chiefs and then had Bashaud Breeland in for a visit. Mm-hmm. That's what you should know about the Vikings' headspace on this one. And Bo Pete Keys, maybe he's a contributor, maybe he can't play. I don't have enough information at this point. But the other element of all of this is that you can go from having a super volatile group that has a high ceiling and a low floor that I think, if they take this group into the NFL season, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. Now, if one of those guys gets hurt, or you get a worst case scenario outcome for any of your starting 3, or again, maybe you get a step back from one of those guys and an injury. All of a sudden now you've gone from saying Mike Hughes is a guy we'll take a look at in training camp and see if we can get him up to speed, to all of a sudden Mike Hughes is a guy who's got to be able to cover Stephon Diggs whenever the Bills set up the matchups the way they want them to. That is unsettling to me. The alternative path here is that you can add perhaps your best and certainly your most consistent and certainly your most proven cornerback talent and asset to the top of the depth chart in Bashaud Breeland, who also does you the favor of knocking everybody else down one peg. Now Snead is able to be weaponized in that slot position, and he's almost certainly going to move to the outside a season from now, right? A year from now, we'll be talking about, if they sign Breeland, we'll be talking about them moving Snead to the outside, because Breeland would probably be back on another one-year deal, which is also probably his point of contention with the Chiefs at this point. I don't know that, but that's my best guess right now.
Seems like it.
Charvarius Ward, he's a free agent, an unrestricted free agent after this season. Fenton doesn't have a ton of time left on his deal. I think he has one more year after this one. DeAndre Baker has some time. Hughes is a free agent after this year. Keys is young. But you want to talk about positional volatility. These dudes, not only do they not have much right now, not only do they not have many things certain right now, they have very little certain down the road. Which, again, if you're 2022 starting corners end up being L'Jarius Sneed and DeAndre Baker, you feel good about it. But you don't have to force that restriction on yourself right now. That's the reason that this has become something that is genuinely frustrating to me, and the tweets I get from people can be genuinely frustrating, and sort of the stalemate that it seems like Breeland and the Chiefs are at is genuinely frustrating, is that there are so few layups. There's so few layups in roster building, in team building, in cap moves, in roster tweaking. Almost every bit of all of this is difficult. It's almost always hard to finagle it to what you need and to improve your roster at good values at important positions. And it's true that I cannot know right now what Bashaud Breeland is going to ultimately sign for. I bet whenever that number comes in, and I'll be honest, if it comes back and I'm surprised, I'll tell you that, I promise. But my guess is that number is going to come back in, and I'm going to say, if I was the Chiefs, I would have matched that. Now, if it's a multi-year deal with a lot of guaranteed money, maybe not. If it's a multi-year deal and that second year is basically fake funny money or just to spread out a salary cap hit, I would do that. I would not blink at that. Because we're going to talk about Julio Jones next segment. And I think I might surprise some people with my Julio Jones take. I don't know.
Trade Mahomes for him.
That's what I was going to say. Damn, you just have me on lock today.
Nailed it.
If you think that the Chiefs should trade for Julio Jones because the whole thing is about winning a Super Bowl right now, you shouldn't bat an eye at bringing Bashaud Breeland back for another year at a value that's going to fit under your salary cap. It's just the logic here has been so inconsistent from some people in a way that is really, I just don't fully understand. It seems like a layup. It just seems easy. And you know what? If you really, if you don't think Breeland can play anymore, then that's the end of your conversation. I've heard that from remarkably few people. If the Chiefs say, he's lost a step or whatever, if that's essentially what they're thinking right now, then everything I'm saying really doesn't matter, I guess. For me, though, every asset is volatile to some extent, right? Every player has ceilings and floors. Everything can go one way or another. But nobody on this list of cornerbacks here has a more narrow, reasonable range of outcomes in my mind than Bashaud Breeland does. And even if let's say you bring Breeland in and it was, I'm going to go, let me pull up his spot track here.
I've actually got it. I have it over the cap here. If you're looking for last year
was $3 million. Do you have the year before?
Year before, his cap number was $2 million. He was paid $2 million. $805 base, so 1.15 bonus.
It was let's go cap hits. It was $2 million and then about 2.5.
2.7.
One
according
and 3.
Over the cap.
So it was 2 and then 3. Let's say it's $4 million this year. Okay. But you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and try to connect a dot here just for everybody's
with the Chiefs
interest.
It's been so far he is paid on cap $4.7 million for his 2 seasons.
If he ends up being paid, let's say he ends up, would he take a 1-year $3.5 million deal? That would pay him less than Harrison Butker and right there with Charvarius Ward. if you bring back Bashaud Breeland, then all of a sudden he looks like he's about to turn 30, and right now he's 29.
Yeah.
He's not, and he just turned 29. He's not 34. But if you go, oh well, you know what? He did lose a step. You know what you have the ability to do? Yank him out of the lineup. You would rather have him be producing, but if you really go, man, we missed on that one, you can pull him off the field and then bring in Mike Hughes or maybe at that point DeAndre Baker is healthy. It's just a way to have more options. He's not going to sign a 1-year, $9 million deal.
No.
And also right now, man, if you told me, people were so stoked about the Jaron Reed signing, and it's fine. I'm not hurt about it or whatever. But if you told me that Jaron Reed was going to have a bigger impact this year than Bashaud Breeland has in either of his 2 years with the Chiefs, I would be pretty surprised. I do think there's a chance that he is impactful and allows the Chiefs to do some more things on the defensive line that will be good for them. But if you would have made me pick between those guys, I would have said, let's sign Bashaud Breeland and then see where we end up. Because I don't want to leave the quarterback position to chance. And maybe the Chiefs are super high on all those guys we've already talked about internally, and I think they would have a legitimate reason to be really high on those guys. I like most of those players quite a bit. But you just don't have to make it harder on yourself for no reason. Trying to make it work with Rashad Fenton, DeAndre Baker, Mike Hughes, Bo Pete Keys all playing for your third spot with a sophomore on one outside and Charvarius Ward on the other outside, whenever Bashaud Breeland was an option for you, feels like getting too cute for no particular reason. It's like, oh, but we could do it with Mike Hughes. Man, don't make yourself do that. Get through training camp and get into the season and let some of those young guys play in preseason games, and then you can make your decision with options there. And
it'd be one thing if the Chiefs just had no money, but their salary cap wise, they're fine. They can handle Bashaud Breeland's contract and still have money for during the season, right? Because like we talk about this all the time, you do want money during the season. Players get cut, yada yada yada. Guy gets hurt. They have plenty.
They could free up $2 million right now by cutting Andrew Wiley, who's not gonna play this year.
Nope.
He's just probably not gonna see the field.
If he does, something's gone.
Something's probably gone pretty wrong. Yeah.
Some of the bad stuff have happened for the Chiefs.
And they may move on from him. They may be able to trade him for a late round draft pick or cut him later in camp or whatever. I think he's an NFL caliber player.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Chiefs have just done so much of that position that having another guy who's gone after you doesn't do as much for you when you're talking about the guard position, where you have one incredibly expensive asset that you just poured in a bunch of money to, and a rookie that you just drafted who everyone thinks could play in a pinch, and two veterans that just came back. They have a wealth of options at guard right now. And Nick Allegretti, who was starting for you last season. They've got 5 guys who you feel okay about at 2 positions. One of them is Jalen Ramsey of guards. You can create the space, let Andrew Wiley go and create the space to bring in Bashaud Breeland.
And honestly, again, like I said, they already have the space. They have the space now. If they really wanted to, they could go.
Mike Hughes has a $1.8 million cap hit this year.
Yeah. They could sign. They could sign Breeland and some other, even if they wanted veteran defensive end, if they really wanted to, and be all right cap wise going into the season.
It's just it's one of those things, one of the pretty rare things that I'm just genuinely confused by. Because it just like I said, it seems too cute. It seems overcomplicated for no particular reason, in a way that that frustrates me, because I just don't. I promise I'm not going to sit down here on a regular basis and tell you that there's a super obvious move that some team has to make or else they're stupid, because it's almost never that clear. This one seems really, really clear to me.
If you had told me that, so I remember everybody saying, obviously before the offseason kind of started, last year was Bashaud Breeland's last year with the Chiefs. I remember thinking to myself, I could see this scenario happening again, where because of COVID and just history, just kind of showed that Bashaud Breeland was a bit undervalued, right? With the exception of one moment where he got a big contract and then obviously had his infection. But like, if you would have told me that Bashaud Breeland would still be a free agent on May 21st, and that it would appear that the Chiefs had no interest in him, or whatever that issue is, right? We don't know exactly.
They haven't prioritized him.
Maybe they have interest.
I do think there is some amount of interest.
For sure, but that gap just being as wide as it is, I'd be stunned. Because if he was still a free agent on May 21st, I would have assumed he would have actually re-signed with the Chiefs on another 1-year deal. And maybe that's the issue, right? He's just holding out till he gets that multi-year deal. And honestly, I don't blame him. He has lost out on so much money because of a foot infection that I don't blame him one bit for being like, nope, I am waiting until I get this multi-year deal. I believe it will come. Don't blame him one bit. I am stunned that he is still a free agent and that there aren't rumors of the Chiefs being and him being closer to an agreement.
Yeah. If the Vikings or somebody else gives him a multi-year deal, then I guess fine.
I hope he gets it. He's been good for the Chiefs.
No, I
that
do
man
too.
Deserves the money.
If he signs somewhere else on a 1-year deal, I'm going to lose my entire mind, and it'll be good radio and bad for my health. Not all moves are this simple in my mind, though. One of those that could be on the table, but definitely has some pros and cons, is Julio Jones. We'll talk about him next.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Can I tell you the secret on this, and then we can talk about other stuff?
Can I tell you something too? Last night,
what?
Like last.
You can't play an Uno reverse card on me.
Yeah,
what?
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Sometimes something will happen in a liner, and I'll have a thought of like, but he just played a reverse on me, and then I hear my past self say exactly that, and I know I'm at least consistent. Consistently, I don't know, but consistent.
Consistent something.
We're really thundering through topics here, and I'm not leaving as big of pockets for the nonsense here. We'll have plenty of time for that. Well, I don't know. We don't have a bunch more shows and everything, but we'll have time to stretch our wings.
Winter is always coming.
And by winter, we mean summer in this case, where all we have is baseball, and then that All-Star break week comes around.
And the Olympics, maybe?
Oh, yeah, we might get an odd year Olympics, I guess.
That's all weird.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Maybe this will be the year that we just do like a really serious Olympic show or something.
I love the Summer Olympics. They're 1,000 times better than the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, hold on, time out. Can you time out really quick?
Yeah.
What?
Beards, you could have just said, yeah, so for lunch today I had sushi, and Rudy and I would not have been more surprised by that sentence you just said. What?
Yeah, I like the Summer Olympics. The Olympics are fun. It's a bunch of just good sports that you don't see that often.
I mean, like,
also Olympic basketball, which is my favorite.
I get basketball, but like,
You
watch
sitting down
any
for
other sport?
For a javelin toss?
Not quite that, but like, some gymnastic stuff, track and field kind of things, like some swimming as well. Those are all good. I like that. I'm not an expert. I just enjoy watching it.
I know. I mean,
you're an expert.
I think that's how most people have to consume the Olympics. Because I don't know 14 things about swimming. I can probably get to 13. It's in water. There are different ways of doing it. Michael Phelps is good at it. Katie Ledecky is a name that I know.
There you go.
The United States is pretty good at it. Australia is usually pretty good at it. Let's see. There's a specific size for an Olympic pool. They all have their own lanes. Most of them shave their body hair. They have swim caps. Hold on, Rudy. Don't give me a freebie. Don't give me a freebie. I got to get to, what did I say? 13 I could get to, but I don't know 14.
Yeah.
There's a sensor pad that you touch to end to hit your timer or whatever. Yeah. I was really into it whenever Michael Phelps was winning a bunch of medals.
Like 2008.
I need my 13th thing. That one guy got arrested for.
I'm trying to remember his name, but I can't think of what it is.
I can't remember his name.
I think
Ryan.
I want to say Ryan also.
No, you're close. Because the freebie I was going to give you was Ryan Lochte definitely lied.
Ryan Lochte.
12.5.
No, I got 13. Ryan Lochte was gonna. No, that's that guy. Yeah, but I don't know 14. That's literally everything I know about.
You got 13. Don't know 14.
But
I feel like one of those Swedish countries are good in that area.
Sure.
I don't know which one, but I feel like one of them.
The surprising thing there, Beards, is not that. Like I think a good percentage of sports fans enjoy casually checking in on the Olympic sports.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. It's just that you enjoy that is surprising. Because I don't think if you're watching anything other than NBA basketball at like 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, like I just don't think about you like surfing through channels trying to find just a sporting event. Yeah, that's not your brand. It's not mine either, for the record.
It's mostly just the Summer Olympics.
Here's the thing. You give me a good snowboarding event in the winter, I'm there for it, dude.
Curling might be the best Olympic sport.
Curling is a good sport, Beards.
I mean, it's a top 3 Olympic sport for sure.
Beards, reach into your heart and try to move some things around and make some room for curling in there, because it's a good sport.
It's a great sport.
It's so rare to find sports that just like out of shape people can do.
Yeah.
Like at an Olympic level.
And use brooms.
With brooms and big rocks. Curling is great. I have not watched curling since the last Olympics, of course. They get loud pants they can wear.
Play it at the Olympics. The funny thing is, it's like all the Olympic sports like do have yearly world championships.
Yeah.
But like nobody knows about any of them.
No.
Just only the Olympics.
I was going to mention darts, and then I was going to mention Ted Lasso, but you guys haven't watched Ted Lasso yet.
Nope.
Do that. Next time we don't have an AES and you guys have some time to kill, watch Ted Lasso.
I watched darts when I was like working mornings here. It was on TV one morning. Oh boy, it was honestly 6 a.m. here on a Saturday. It was electric.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dude.
I'm just waiting for arm wrestling.
Okay. We're gonna end up taking a quicker break and then come back with Julio Jones talk because I gotta at least give you 5 minutes on it. I will not watch arm wrestling because there's always a chance of a break.
No.
Yeah.
I'll watch the next
Like an
sport
elbow
that
dislocation.
I want to see. If we're gonna have arm wrestling, that sport where you slap each other.
This is what I was going to talk about.
Except we can't have that one Russian guy that cheats.
I don't know.
Have any cheater.
Watch.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I'm not saying this to anyone within the sound of my voice right now. If you just Google slap fight tournament or whatever.
It's wild.
It's crazy. It's crazy. A good slap fight knockout is up there for me, and just pure sports adrenaline moments of just it turns into like a rap battle, like the most cliche possible rap battle where everyone just goes because you've clearly killed a man with your open hand.
Slapped a man so hard, like some of them.
You get the talcum powder, and it makes you just leave a chin-shaped cloud in the air as your face bounces.
The way some of them go down, and I know this shouldn't be funny to see a man just be completely knocked out from a slap.
It is, though.
But it is. Like, if he was punched in the face and knocked out, I feel bad for him.
See, the thing is, there's that one Russian guy that I'm sure you're all referring to whenever you see anybody get knocked out or whatever.
I have no idea.
He hits with his wrist in your ear.
Yeah, you can't have that.
Not
No,
what
get
you're
your
supposed
judges.
to do.
You got judges.
But he continually does
gotta get that guy out of
and
here.
gets mad whenever anybody blames him. But he's also the only guy that anybody ever cares about in the sport.
No, not in my house, Beards.
No,
you don't know my life. You don't know my life. There's an entire YouTube channel that there's just a full playlist of this guy just doing essentially play-by-play highlights through slap fights. I have seen at least the highlights of a dozen different slap fights with a large number of varying competitors. So no, Beards, I'm not just here for the LeBron or whatever. I guess if he's cheating,
he's the Jordan.
It's the Jordan, yeah. Of slap
Russell.
fights. I'm not here for
A bunch
that.
of white guys who can't dribble with the left hand.
I'm not here for that. I'm saying I'm here for the love of the game. Because here's the thing, it doesn't matter who it is. I don't really care who delivers the hit.
Yeah.
I'm way more interested in whoever is getting hit. Because if it's a big bulky dude who just eats a slap for breakfast, I'm loving it. If it's a big bulky dude who takes that slap and goes, it lights out like Looney Tunes where their eyes all of a sudden say no vacancy and then they fall down unconscious. That's also good television.
So good.
It's really good. All right, we're going to take a break whenever we come back. It's going to be the end of the show because we're going to get you to Grizzlies versus Warriors coming up here in about 15 minutes. But I'm going to give you 5 minutes of Julio Jones talk, and I might be able to surprise you. We'll see.
At JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, at Not That Rudy, at Sports Radio 810. Just do it already. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
We all have things in this life we can't fully explain. Like, what's the purpose of life? Is there a God? And why do the Chiefs cut Jeremy Maclin?
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Last segment of a 1 hour show here tonight, and I got to talk about Julio Jones at least a little bit. The reports are that the Atlanta Falcons would like to trade Julio Jones for reasons I don't fully understand, because they restructured Matt Ryan's contract and then drafted a tight end, and now they're trying to maybe do a soft rebuild. It doesn't really make sense, honestly. But whatever. Not particularly my concern. At this point, the Chiefs have not been one of the rumored landing spots. They are not a Vegas favorite to end up with Julio Jones, but of course, a receiver's on the market, so we're talking about him.
Yep.
Here's my sort of perhaps slightly surprising Julio Jones take on behalf of the Chiefs. Obviously, the acquisition cost is very important here. If they end up wanting a first-round pick, I'm going to be a little hesitant, but the Chiefs have worked without first-round picks before. The issue is that eventually that does catch up to you a little bit.
They haven't had one for, 4 straight years?
They haven't had a good one for that long, for sure. By positional value. I don't know if Clyde Edwards-Helaire knows who I am, but I really hope he doesn't just think of me as the guy who hates him, because it's not him. If they would have taken DeAndre Swift there, I actually would have been more mad. So they took the play, and also Clyde's going to have a huge year this year, I'm sure, and it's going to people are going to yell at me, and they're going to miss the point. It's whatever.
I mean, they're going to yell at you regardless.
Also fair. But the whatever the draft pick compensation would be is important, because even though I'm a bit of a salary cap agnostic, I can't be sure if it does or doesn't exist. Seth is in the one way in his life that he is a full atheist is in the belief of in regards to the god of the salary cap.
Yeah.
Seth is convinced that he does not exist. I'm a bit agnostic on the cap. I think there can certainly be places where you end up having consequences, but it's much more flexible than people generally give it credit for. I get all that. One place where it does concern me a bit is whenever you're giving out these big contracts and also not setting up a path to replace them with cheaper deals from your draft picks. That cycle is a dangerous game to be playing. But what I will say is Julio Jones's salary does not concern me. If Julio Jones was a free agent right now or would have been earlier this offseason, I actually would have been pretty down, because the Falcons are going to have to eat a little bit of his cap, probably, and some of that is not base salaries. Like, his base salary this year is $15 million. Next year's $11.5, and there's a pretty easy out then after that. I mean, for the team that's trading for him, they'll have a pretty easy out whenever they want, because that prorated roster bonus is going to be dead cap money for the Falcons. It won't come to whoever trades for him. And I also think that the narrative around Julio is that he's like nearly washed, and that's super not true.
I've been hearing injury prone a lot, which is
Yeah.
also weird, because he was last year.
He's questionable every week, and then plays every week, and then scores a touchdown and picks up 80 or 90 yards every week.
He played 9 games last year, which is obviously not ideal. The 6 years prior to that, he played he played 14 once, 15 twice, 16 3 times.
So I think injury prone. He had a bad injury year, and he does seem like he's banged up pretty frequently. But then he goes out and he looks like Julio Jones. That's right.
And that's most NFL players, whether they're on the report or not, they're banged up.
Tyreek Hill is not injury prone because he had a sternoclavicular joint injury. I like to say sternoclavicular every once in a while just to keep it fresh in my mind, so I never forget what a sternoclavicular joint is. But from the monetary side of things, I'd be down if he would have been sort of the Sammy Watkins replacement that never came, at least in terms of a veteran, right? That would have been an upgrade. It would have been an upgrade, and I would have been very down for it. My concern isn't even in giving up a draft pick to bring in Julio Jones. It's where are you going to make up the inherent value that comes with a draft pick's contract. Because Tyreek Hill's coming up on a new deal pretty soon here. The Chiefs could extend Tyrann Mathieu, by the way, to make the space they would need this year, just in case you're wondering about cap space in 2021.
That's a whole thing.
They'd be able to work around that, yeah, and I think the Mathieu deal is going to come eventually, honestly. But I thought Breeland would end up in Kansas City, so who's to say?
You didn't think they were going to draft a running back first round.
I sure didn't. I would be happy to see Julio Jones on this team. I would not be very worried about the cap number because they would still also, if it broke bad, it would be really easy for them to get out of the rest of the deal. What I do get concerned about, though, is are you going to anytime soon draft another young receiver with a high pick who could help you lower the cost of that position group? Or are you going to take another high pick and maybe it's going to be on a corner so you never have to spend money there at that position? Or are you going to draft? Do you need the draft Tyrann Mathieu replacement at some point? Are you going to be able to draft Frank Clark's replacement soon and have that kind of rookie contract? It's a lot of pressure on the guys currently on the roster. If you say, well, they have Josh Kando and McCole Hardman and all it's a lot to ask. So I actually think that just sort of judging by, we had like a round table on Arrowhead Report and judging by what all of those guys had said and by kind of Twitter at this point, I think I'm probably more interested in this from the Chiefs' perspective than most. I do have to worry at least a little bit, though, about the draft picks, even though we get, as I've said before, so horny for Traymon Smith. Every draft pick that the Chiefs make, that guy becomes the next big thing until he ultimately doesn't at a pretty high clip. Like, that's just how drafts work for every fan base. But I would be a little bit nervous about them giving up a couple of very, very valuable dart throws to bring in Julio Jones for a year or two. Kind of talking about a relatively short-term deal, probably. But again, if you bring in Julio Jones and he's your Sammy Watkins replacement, and then Cornell Powell is your Julio Jones replacement, I mean, I think that logic all still tracks. You've got to start like having multiple undrafted free agents playing significant roles in your team. This is kind of a weird place to go, but you certainly you're moving on from a guy like Frank Clark if you're going to try to bring in someone else, and he's got a pretty big dead cap hit. Are you going to be able to bring back Tyrann Mathieu? How is your contract structure for Tyreek Hill going to be? You need Nick Bolton to pan out so he can replace Anthony Hitchens. You cannot have an injury among any of those guys at the top. Orlando Brown and Joe Thuney have big deals. Thuney's is locked in. Brown's is not yet set, but those deals are coming. You might not be able to keep Derek Nottie around. Maybe you don't get to take a shot on a guy like Jaron Reed. You probably are forced to let a Bashaud Breeland walk. And you've got to fill, I'm not even just saying for like next year or for this year.
Just in general going forward.
As a general mindset of what happens whenever you have when you have not only a top-heavy cap, which doesn't bother me that much, but when you also don't have a lot of your picks, which also in a vacuum doesn't bother me that much. Both of those at the same time, however, give me a little bit of pause.
That's how you have success for 20 years.
That's right.
The Chiefs, you can make all these moves now and have success now, but if you want to have success for the next 20, which should be the goal for Patrick Mahomes, you have to hit on all those things, which is why it's so hard.
And also, it would be really fun to have Julio Jones in this offense. So, it's a mixed bag.
Fun.
Unlike bringing back Bashaud Breeland, which would be such an easy, smart thing to do. Enjoy your weekends, everybody. Memphis versus Golden State up next here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We're back on Monday. Until then, like I said, enjoy the basketball. Enjoy your weekend. Bye, Mom.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.